Hi, I'm Rick Christopherson of RTS Engineering, developer of the multi-position guide stop for the Festool Domino joiner. Today I'd like to show you how to build a drawer box using the multi-position guide stop, the Festool Domino joiner, the new 4mm Domino tenons, and the Domino cutter. We'll also be using the TS55 guided saw, the parallel guides to attach to our guide rails. We'll be using the MFK 700 trim router along with a 7mm solid carbide dado bit and a roundover bit. We're also going to be using the new Festool VACSYS vacuum clamping system. Now, typical drawer construction consists of a drawer box and a separate drawer front that we attach after installation so we can align our drawer front to the adjacent drawers and doors of the cabinet. The drawer box consists of the drawer sides and the front and rear, where our drawer sides are a little bit taller than our front and rear so that we can put a profile on the edges and not have an interference in the corner. Our drawer bottom is dadoed in to the sides using the 7mm cutter to match the thickness of our material. So why don't we begin? Okay, so the first cut we're going to make is to rip the entire sheet at 130mm. We set the stops on the parallel guide to 130. Slide it into position, and we're ready to cut. The next thing that we're going to do is make a rough cross cut on our drawer stock into two pieces so that we have one piece for the sides and one piece for the front and rear, because we'll need to re-rip the front and rear to be a little bit narrower than the sides are. Because the front and rear of our drawer box is not as tall as the sides, we need to re-rip our stock here to be 1/4 of an inch narrower than the side material. And we'll do that using TS55 saw. So now we have our rough stock for the drawer front and rear and our rough stock for the sides. We can now cut them to length. Okay, the next step that we have to take is to route a dado into the bottom edge of all of the drawer material to accept the bottom of the drawer. And I'm using a white melamine coated particle board. It's a little bit thicker than 1/4 of an inch. So I picked up a 7mm solid carbide router bit from Festool, and we'll mount that in our MFK 700 router. Install the router into the base. And I want to set the depth of the cut to be about 3/16. And then we will use the auxiliary fence to control the position of the router against the workpiece. And I want to set the distance between the fence and the center of the router bit to be 1/2 inch. Lock that down. And I'm going to use the Festival Vaxis to hold our workpiece. We'll install the narrow head. Turn our pump on. Now, because the router is rotating clockwise, it's cutting across this way and it wants to pull the router the opposite way. So you want to make sure that you're routing in this direction so that the router gets pulled into the workpiece. If you came in this direction, it would pull the router away and you'd have a wavy cut. I've got the speed of the router set to medium. You don't want to have a high speed when you're plowing a dado because it'll build up heat and that's bad for the router bit. And we'll just go through and route all of our pieces. We're ready to begin dominoing our drawer material. First thing that you want to do before any project with Domino is check all of your settings. We're going to be using the new 4mm Domino cutter and the 4mm dominoes. If you are using the 5mm cutter, your settings will be a little bit different and your manual will explain what those should be. In order to get a plunge depth of 10mm at the cutter so we don't penetrate our stock, I have Domino set to the 20mm range on plunge depth. My fence is set to 6mm high, which is half the thickness of our drawer stock. And I'm using the multi-position guide stop with the guide stops set at 1 1/4 inches from the edge. The multi-position guide features adjustable and retractable stop arms that are used to position the domino joiner against the edge of your workpiece. Each stop arm also features a threaded hole to insert a spacer screw should you ever need stop positions closer than 3/8 of an inch. With the spacer screw installed, stop positions can be as close as 70 thousandths of an inch. The centering plates on the back of the guide align with the edge of your domino machine so that it can be reinstalled and always be back into the same position without needing to recalibrate anything. For our drawer project, we need to use 2 pair of stop arms. The main stop arm is set at 1 1/4 inches, and the second stop arm that we use for our drawer sides is set at 1.5 inches. To adjust the position of our stop arms, take 2 blocks of wood, hold them flush at one end, and then scribe 2 pencil lines across both blocks. This one is at 1 1/4 inches, this is at 1.5 inches. We use 1 block for the right stop arms, and we use the second block for the left stop arms. We take the block, set it on top of the domino joiner, and align the pencil line with the sight gauge on the fence. When you have it perfectly aligned with your sight gauge, clamp it down to hold it in position. And now we can adjust the position of the stop arm until it touches our block. Once it's touching the block of wood, tighten it down, and repeat that process for the other stop positions. With the domino and multi-position guide adjusted, we're ready to begin building our drawers. We're going to start out with the front and rear of the drawers. Now, the first thing you want to make sure to do is that your dado goes down so that the fence of the domino joiner is registering off the outside surface of whatever box you're building, whether it's a drawer or any other box, it's always registering off the outside. I have the left dog in the down position, so we'll begin on this edge. Line it up with the edge of the workpiece. Firmly hold Domino at the handle. I have very little control back at the motor, and I use one hand to gently push in, but all the control is up at the forward hand. Turn Domino on and plunge in smoothly and slowly. Next, we have the drawer side material, and to domino this, it needs to be in the vertical position with the dado facing towards you so that you're plunging into the side. Because our drawer sides are taller than our front and rear, we have to use the second set of guide stops on the multi-position guide stop. And to make sure that I remember to use those different stops for these cuts, I've added some blue painter's tape as a reminder. We'll flip the axis to the vertical, take our side, mount it. The last step we have before we can begin assembling our drawer is to cut our drawer bottom. And the easiest way to determine the dimensions of the bottom that we need is to use the components that we already have cut. Now the width of our bottom is going to be equal to the front or the rear plus the width of the dado. So to determine the width of our bottom, you want to take your two pieces, hold them together with the two dados facing each other, and measure that gap of two dados, which is 3/8 of an inch. So our width becomes 15 plus 3/8, or 15 3/8. Now the depth of our bottom is going to be equal to the length of our sides minus the non-dadoed remainder of our material. To determine our depth, take your components and put them together back to back with dados facing outward and measure the material in between, which is 5/8 of an inch. So the depth of our drawer bottom needs to be 17 minus 5/8, or 16 3/8. So the first thing we're going to do is square up our stock. We're going to use the multifunction table. Make the first cut just inside the edge here so we have a nice clean edge to begin with. Now that we have our stock squared, I'm going to cut it to size at 16 3/8 by 15 3/8. We're ready to start assembling our drawer. I like to start with one of the sides, and what I do is I first glue the dominoes into the mortises on the sides, and then I apply my joint glue to the edge of the mating pieces. This gives me better control over the glue application and less squeeze out into the inside of the drawer. When I apply my glue to the edge, I try and keep the bead of glue a little bit toward the outside as much as possible and not past center, with just a tiny drop inside the mortise itself, enough to catch onto the domino. Gently slide the piece over the dominoes, and I used the narrow domino setting, so there's no tolerance here. Push those down. Now we take our bottom piece and slide it down through our dados. Push it until it's tight. Nice fit. We want to get some clamps on this. You don't want to have your clamps too far in, because what can happen is you can bow your sides in. So you want to have your clamping pressure so it's acting pretty close to in line with the piece that's being clamped. When doing that, we're going to get a little bit more squeeze out, so I can clean that up. And anything that you don't get immediately, you can clean up later with a chisel. It's just a lot easier to catch it while it's wet. Now the last thing we want to do is check the square of the drawer. And we do that by taking diagonal measurements. I have 23 1/4 this way, 23 5/16 this way. That means I need to compress this a little bit, and that might have been enough to do it, which it has, so that we now have a square drawer. And we'll let this dry for half an hour or so, and we're ready to finish this up.